Long before the Masoretic canon was established at Jamnia, there were another group of Jews in Alexandria, Egypt. They had their own ideas about what was canonical, and the Alexandrian canon, if we can call it that, were these Jews in Alexandria that had their own ideas about what was canonical. The Alexandrian canon included the Masoretic canon, so it had all those 39 books of the Old Testament, but it also had 7 additional books and some additions to books. There are additions to Esther. When we talked about Esther before, remember it did not have the name God in it. Well, in the additions to Esther, God's mentioned a lot to try and make up for that fact. There's some additions to Daniel, these additional stories of Bel and the dragon and Susanna, and some other additions to Daniel as well. Now, what's significant about this is the Alexandrian canon, or that larger canon from the Masoretic text, became the basis for what is the most important Bible translation ever. In the history of history, the most important Bible translation ever is the Septuagint. That canon, the Alexandrian canon, formed the basis for the Septuagint. What is the Septuagint? Well, the Septuagint is the translation of that Alexandrian canon into Greek. So where the original Hebrew text was written in Hebrew, people no longer spoke Hebrew in that time between the Testaments. They began to speak Greek, thanks to Alexander the Great. And they needed a copy of the Hebrew text in their own language. And so the Alexandrian canon was translated into Greek. The reason that is the most significant Bible translation ever is because the Septuagint was the Bible for the early Christian church. When they were living the New Testament, because they didn't have the New Testament at that time, when those first missionaries were going out, when they wanted to show Jesus was the Jewish Messiah, they needed to, show these Old Testament scriptures as a fulfillment. They needed a Greek copy of the scriptures. Well, you know what? They happened to have one, the Septuagint. So it became a missionary Bible in a lot of ways. Now, what's significant about the Septuagint, it's often represented with the letters LXX, which are the Roman numerals for, that's right, 70. I heard a couple of you. 70. Roman numerals, they're not just for Super Bowls anymore. That's right, they also represent the Septuagint. The Septuagint has a mythology associated with it, a story, a fairy tale, a fable. I'm doing everything I can to help you understand that this is not fact, okay? This is not history. This is a legend that is associated with it. I keep getting back on tests that this is history. It's not history, okay? It's just a fairy tale. The legend goes, according to the story, that Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who was the king of Egypt, wanted a copy of the Hebrew Scriptures for his great library in Alexandria. And of course, since he was Greek himself, and he believed that all the intelligent thinking people of the world spoke Greek, we couldn't have a Hebrew copy of the text in his library. He needed a Greek copy of his text in the library. So, the story goes, according to legend, that he commissioned 6 translators from each of the 12 tribes, who all came down. That would give you 72. I don't know if 2 of them didn't get registered in time, or I don't know what happened. I don't know why we only know it as 70 instead of 72. But the tradition goes that those 72 men go down, each of them with their copy of the Hebrew Scripture. Each of them go back into their cubicles, and each of them come back together only to discover that miracle of miracles, every single one of their 72 translations matched up down to the last word. Now, if any of you are fluent in a second language, you know that 2 people would not translate 1 page of text exactly the same way. Translation's not code breaking, it's always approximation. So the idea that 72 different people would translate something as large and diverse as the biblical text exactly the same way strains credibility to the point of being completely unbelievable. I might as well have told you that I've invented time travel and have met Abraham Lincoln. It's that level of fantasy when you talk about 72 translations matching up all down to the very last letter. So why in the world would you make up this fantasy around this book? Well, I've been in church a long time. I know some of you have been in church a long time. How would you say religious folks are with change? Pretty flexible, roll with the punches, able to get... No, right? Very traditional, very hard-headed. And of course, it doesn't matter if things are irrelevant. It doesn't matter if traditions are impeding the gospel. Doesn't matter. You have to hold on to these things no matter what. Well, there was naturally resistance to a Greek copy of the Hebrew Scriptures. I mean, after all, God spoke Hebrew. It said so right there in the Hebrew Bible. He said to Moses at the burning bush, Etyeh esher etyeh. He didn't say ego hon aimi. So we don't want a Greek copy of the Scriptures. Well, you can't read it anymore. It doesn't matter. It needs to be Hebrew always. That story, that legend of the 72 going down and translating, was created as PR. It was created as a way to say, look, this could not possibly have happened unless a miracle had occurred. Obviously, God has given God's blessing upon this translation of the Septuagint. Well, however the translation came about, very likely over time more slowly than it did all in one event, it soon became very, very important to Christians as they traveled abroad, and going to be important later on when we talk about the development of the English Bible.